My name is Siddharth Chatterjee, and I'm the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Kenya. The Kenya-Uganda cross-border program comes on the heels of a remarkable initiative that Kenya and Ethiopia took back in 2015. And I must start at the very outset to commend and credit President Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenya's president, for his vision, for his Pan-African spirit, and his desire to see that borders across Kenya are one which are stable and peaceful. So back in 2015, my predecessor, a lady by the name of Madam Nardos Bekele Thomas, who was the resident coordinator here, got the country team together to start a conversation about how we could actually advance the whole agenda of peace, advance more stability, particularly in the Moyale area of the Kenya-Ethiopia border, which had seen internecine conflict over several years. And both President Kenyatta and Prime Minister Haile Mariam were looking at ways on how to kind of calm these places down. So the President saw the UN as a natural ally in this initiative. So we started a conversation across the borders. And finally, in 2015, in December, it was a memorable event where President Kenyatta and the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Prime Minister Haile Mariam, came together and an MOU was signed. That time we had CS Amina Mohammed, who was the Foreign Minister of Kenya, and the Director General, the current Director General of WHO, Dr. Tedros, was the Foreign Minister of Ethiopia. And I have to say, it was perhaps one of the most poignant experiences that we as a UN country team experienced there, to find communities that had actually traditionally been in conflict, tribal leaders, women's group, young people coming together and said, enough is enough. We are now stopping the conflict between us. And that led to what I would term as a peace dividend. Very quickly, if you see the road or the Lapsset Highway all the way from Lamu to Addis came up, huge amounts of development came up over there. The current CS for Finance, CS Yatani, was the governor of Marsabit County then. And the remarkable role he played in galvanizing partnerships with civil society, with his county government, with the UN family. And suddenly we saw rapid progress, human development progress starting to happen. Immediately after that, Governor Mahmood, who followed up, and the consistence of moving this program forward continued. Now, this program was assessed by the UN University of Japan, and they called it a global best practice of how the UN not only was operating as one or delivering as one in the country, but delivering as one across borders. So you had the UN country teams of Ethiopia and Kenya converging to this. And I have to commend the European Union in particular for having come up with the initial financing, the seed financing that we needed to get these programs going. So it really became a real partnership between the European Union, the government of Kenya, the government of Ethiopia, the two UN country teams. And this program in very ways responds to the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, his vision of prevention, the prevention of conflict. And this means what is called a triple nexus of peace, of development, of humanitarian action. These events happen simultaneously. So this program, therefore, President Kenyatta directed then CS Vamalwa to say, listen, why don't we look at expanding this opportunity on the Uganda side of the border, which is the Karamoja belt. So I had the privilege of actually representing the UN family as the UN resident coordinator in 2018 for a meeting which took place in Kampala, Uganda, which was organized actually by the Global Peace Foundation, which is a big global NGO, and Daniel Omondi is its head in Kenya. We went together with CS Vamalwa, and it was a joint team of the government of Kenya and the government of and the United Nations family. So we went to Uganda, and we started a conversation in Uganda with the Minister for Karamoja Affairs, Mr. John Byagobambe, the UN country team there, and key people. And essentially, those 3 days that we spent there set up the first joint meeting we had here in Nairobi in December of 2018, which actually turned into a tremendous spirited conversation as to how do we kind of not only mirror the success of what we did on the Kenya-Ethiopia border, but what can we really do in terms of galvanizing the best practices from across in order to make sure that this program started to kind of reap results quickly. What started in August of 2018 came to full realization in September of 2019. Again, I was there as the leader of the UN country team. My counterpart in Uganda, Rosa Mulango, is the resident coordinator there. We came together with the respective country teams to see President Uhuru Kenyatta and President Museveni come together in Moroto, in Karamoja County, in the Karamoja belt, to sign an MOU. And again, once again, traditional tribes which have seen a lot of rivalry, from cattle rustling to competition, from West Pokot to the Turkanas, to it was a complex internecine nature of conflict. And suddenly you notice all the county governors, the governor of West Pokot, Governor Nanook of Turkana, everybody coming there to look at what can the political leadership do to come together with the UN family, with the civil society, with the Global Peace Foundation, to start transforming the narrative. A narrative of great hunger, of violence, of insecurity, of deep poverty. How do we change that narrative? Because the potential of Karamoja is huge, huge. I mean, if these places, Karamoja itself is, not only borders Kenya and Uganda, but it also borders South Sudan and Ethiopia. And imagine that if we could actually transform Karamoja, which it can easily be done, into, let's say, a major agricultural hub. It can provide, from livestock to what you can grow there. It could actually become a green belt or a food basket for the entire neighborhood. So we witnessed that happen. My colleagues in UNDP very quickly worked with the CS Devolution's office to start putting, and they actually invested in 3 deep wells over there, so that 3 dams, so that water could be provided. One of the major reasons that people used to constantly cross over to the Uganda side was the protracted drought that happened in 2016, 2017. And as a result, it became a competition over meager resources. And that is what was the major conflict. If you look at the conflicts in these areas, it is basically about water, it is about pasture, it is about making sure that people have access to all these things. But we can change that narrative. And this is what the UN did, was to partner up with the government of Kenya. And today I can proudly say that under the leadership of President Kenyatta, and really at the vanguard is the Cabinet Secretary of Devolution, Eugene Mamalwa, and on the Uganda side, John Begabambe, they are doing remarkably well in terms of pulling people together. And what we are hoping is that the government of Kenya, the government of Uganda, together with the UN family, we actually open these places up for investments by the private sector. So we can actually look at major investments coming in to transform this into what I would term from a green economy point of view. And to me, it inspires hope. It inspires an opportunity where we can actually see how this program can be implemented in other parts of Africa too. Because what we've actually demonstrated under President Kenyatta's leadership is these cross-border programs actually work. What they need is what I would term as 3 Ps. P number 1 is political will, which is precisely what Kenya demonstrated, which is precisely what Ethiopia demonstrated, which is precisely what Uganda demonstrated. The second P is the right public policy. And these public policies, led by the ministers of devolution here, Eugene Mamalwa, and the Minister for Karamoja Affairs in Uganda, John Begabambe, have shown that how these public policies can be implemented in the right way. The third, as the UN Deputy Secretary General often says, we have to flip the orthodoxy. It's a partnership. It's a partnership which is not the traditional partnership of the UN and the government alone. It is a partnership with civil society. It's a partnership with women's organization. It is a partnership with youth groups. It's a partnership with the private sector to make them realize the huge economic potential of these places. So in a sense, as we mark this 1-year anniversary, I can look back at this 1 year to say, thank you to the leadership of the government of Kenya and the government of Uganda. A huge thank you to the UN country team. A huge thank you in particular to UNDP, which actually quickly unlocked about $2 million of seed funding across the two borders so that we could get things moving. But above all, a huge thank you to the Global Peace Foundation, which actually was the very architect of helping enable this Kenya-Uganda cross-border program to happen.
And someone will be watching this and wondering, so what exactly was the role global role that UN played in terms of, this whole MOU, so that we were able to realize?
The UN is a partner of the government of Kenya. It's a facilitator. The UN facilitated it. Finally, it was up to the governments to make that decision. But it was a real partnership. It was not about one or the other. It was a real partnership. It was a process of dialogue. And the UN is seen as a neutral partner. In fact, in Kenya, I'm proud to say that we have a very strong partnership with the government and with the people of Kenya. And I think we are also seen as a trusted partner. And that made a big difference. So the UN was very much central to making this whole thing unravel.
Yeah, sure. Now, it's now 1 year. We may have mentioned a few things, but what would you say are the key areas that you've been able to see from your perspective that this whole 1 year Kenya has been able to do A, B, or C?
I think very importantly, we've seen a tone down of violence in those areas, which used to see a lot of localized conflicts. We've seen those things come down. The second, we've already seen, opportunities of development has already started. Access to water, access to more resources. The initial seed funding has made it happen. So we are already seeing that in a span of 1 year. And I think the third most important thing is the realization in the political leadership around this place is that the success of the Africa Free Trade Area will happen when we have borders which are stable, which are free of violence, where people collaborate. And as President Kenyatta said something very remarkable that day in Moroto, he said that unless young people, there is the free movement of young people, of goods, services, we will not be able to generate the kind of intellectual capital and human capital that we need to advance each other. And that is why I say it is so important that these cross-border programs are seen as a bridge to humanity, a bridge to human development. And more importantly, can this become the new European Union type of model given the Africa Free Trade Area? And I think if it's going to happen, mark my words, it will happen in sub-Saharan Africa, where I see Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia as key leaders in making it happen.
Now, talking about that, maybe are there other initiatives that the UN is, supporting within the region apart from the Ethiopia and Uganda borders in Kenya?
Oh, the UN has a big presence across the region, and the UN country team here in Kenya has the UN Development Assistance Framework, which we actually signed with the government of Kenya in June 2018. This was led by CS Yatani and CS Eugene Wamalwa, and it's a $1.9 billion program. It comes to an end in June 2022. And the whole purpose of this is focused on three things. One is on transformational governance and improvement of governance. Number two is development of human capital. Number three is sustainability and livelihoods. The most important thing is that a lot of this got interrupted with the COVID-19. So in March, what we did as the UN family in Kenya was looked at all our resources and redeployed it to respond to the public health emergency of COVID-19. So we redeployed about $45 million or about 5 billion Kenya shillings to support the public health response. But what we also did by the 9th of April, under the leadership of CS Yatani and CS Wamalwa, we launched a global flash appeal, requesting for about $267 million to respond to the crisis, not just for health, but also for social protection, to not allow people to fall into the poverty trap, multiple areas of work. So we did that. So the UN is right now on the front foot, working with the government in responding to the COVID-19 crisis, responding to the ongoing floods. Remember that we've seen some major floods, so we are out there, and these include the bordering areas. And of course, you may also know that we've also just come out of a major fight against the locusts, which came and invaded parts of northern Kenya. And finally, with a lot of effort, and thanks to the leadership and the work of the Food and Agriculture Organization together with Peter Munya, the CS of Agriculture, a joint partnership there, we've actually managed to now come to the end of the locust invasion. We are not out of the woods yet. You can see that climate change is having an impact. But what we are doing is working in lockstep with the government of Kenya, and a lot of our work is actually focused in these areas too. Karamoja has the potential of becoming a breadbasket of the region. I mean, it is rich in livestock. It borders 4 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. It can become a tourism destination. I mean, the potential is frankly unlimited. What will limit us is our imagination. And that is why we must see major public-private investments, blended financing. You know, governments alone can't do it. There's not enough of resources. If you see, the effect of COVID-19 is a major shrinkage of GDPs across the world, amongst the most modern economies and elsewhere. So I think it's very, very important to look at how do we forge new partnerships, bring new private sector companies, new countries into this equation, and say, how do we change the dynamic here so that it's a win-win? It's just not the win-win for the recipient, but it's a win-win for the investors also. And that is what will change the dynamic of this place. Frankly, this program can then be easily replicated in, let's say, the Sahel and many other parts of Africa where we are seeing this kind of instability.
Right. I think we've captured at least everything, unless maybe there's something you feel we haven't mentioned.
I would just want to conclude by saying that I, as a UN resident coordinator in Kenya, feel very privileged to serve in a country like Kenya, which has a leader like President Kenyatta, who sees the big picture, who sees that opportunity of Kenya and beyond Kenya, who sees that Pan-African model being realized, and his team, you know, that works with him, the CSs that we work with every day, you know, whether it's CS Malwa or it's CS Joe Machuru. We've just returned from a visit to the Silicon Valley and the potential of really using big data technology and innovation to leapfrog Kenya's human development. In my view, Kenya is potentially a blueprint for the human development of all of Africa.